Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of Bite Size Bish. I just wanted to let you all know that I recorded my episode on neurodiversity, and that will be released next week. I thought about releasing it this week, but to be candid, I've really not been feeling well. And, with cold and flu season being here, COVID season being here, I basically have to prepare for not if I get sick, when I get sick, because when I do, I will be down for the count. So anyway, I wanted to spread out my content a little bit. So this week, I have my podcast with my friend Kristen. It was a really great episode. I've gotten so much great feedback about it, about she converted to Mormonism, and we talked a lot about Secret Lives of Mormon Wives and Salt Lake City. So definitely tune into that. And next week will be the neurodiversity episode. I'm going to have on someone I connected with on Instagram. Her name is Kathy. She has a son on the autism spectrum who is nonverbal, and I'm having her on to discuss her experiences with that because, I believe that people living with these issues are the people who understand them best, the patients, the caregivers. And so as a professional patient, I do not know what it is like to deal with autism spectrum disorder, even though I have worked with it. That's not a diagnosis that I live with. And so she's the expert. Her son is the expert. And I cannot wait to have her on to discuss her experience, strength, and hope with you all. Today's episode is going to be short. It's a check-in, and I wanted to, candidly thank you all for the support. I've gotten a lot of really great messages. I always do every week. That if you are not sure what I'm talking about, check out my Bite Size Bish podcast where I talk about my week of being grazed by a car in my neighborhood, being gaslit by police, having an oncology appointment, and having some sort of celebrity beef with Tamara that I didn't intend to have. I talked about that on my last Bite Size Bish. Tune into that if you're confused. But, my nervous system has really been agitated. And so today what I wanted to do is I think what people like is when I share my experience, strength, and hope in these Bite Size Bish podcasts, because, I've been struggling and I know that people are too. And so when they look at me and they think, well, you're eloquent and well-spoken and educated. And it's like, yeah, but I struggle too. So, I just hope to validate folks and just take all the stigma away from the struggle bus as we can. That's what I love to call it, the struggle bus that I permanently ride on just in one nonstop loop. So this week, based on all that stuff, I wanted to share some of what I've been doing to calm my nervous system, because with complex PTSD, my nervous system literally gets triggered. It's like not literally on fire, because that would be the incorrect use of literally, but it's smoldering. It's like on fire in its own way. And I know that when that happens, that physically I really struggle. And I've talked about all my physical stuff before too, so I don't want to belabor that point. But this week I have been feeling terrible. My pain has been higher than it has in a long time. I have had a hard time, functioning and going about doing the things that I need to do. And my anxiety has been absolutely off the charts. The reason for that is this week I have another appointment with my oncologist from Penn, which I know that he's not going to say anything different, but still. So I have that appointment. And then the same day that I have that follow-up with my specialist oncologist at Penn, I have a mammogram. And every year I am at increased risk because, well, number one, of my family history, my cancer history, I have done genetic testing. I will say, in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, instead of the pink washing nonsense that we see, I'm going to give real information and really want women to understand the need for self-advocacy. So I got the genetic testing, which I want any woman who has a history, please consider it if you haven't done it already. I didn't test positive for any of those genes that are necessarily linked to breast cancer, but I have something called a variant, which just means that it's a genetic anomaly that they just don't have the research to know what that means yet. It could mean nothing. It could mean something. That's the beauty of genetic testing. And so I will continue to do it until hopefully I can find out information about what specifically, it was a variant on the P10 gene, what that means for me in the future. Could that be why I have all these problems? Who knows? But genetic testing is a way to take our power back, and it's a way to basically gain information from our body. And so I understand the fear around it, but if you've been hesitating, please at least check it out. Most hospitals have a system where you can get it and it's covered by your insurance. I recommend people to do that because knowing is always better than not knowing. As a 2-time cancer survivor who's been told that I'm going to die twice, I promise you knowing is better than not knowing. I promise you that. So in addition to that piece of it that increases my risk for breast cancer, I also have very large, dense breasts, which I know people are like, oh my God, I wish. And it's like, no, you don't. No, you don't. Not at all. As we age, gravity takes course. It makes finding breast cancer even more challenging. So in people who have dense breasts, I see a surgical breast oncologist because my risk is high and because I have whatever the level of density is, I have the highest level of density. And by the way, this Heather Dubrow on Real Housewives of Orange County, this is what she was talking about for those who didn't get that, is that it's not about the size. It's about the density of the breast tissue. And so unfortunately, I have large size and extreme density, which basically makes looking for cancer in a mammogram like trying to find a snowflake in a snowstorm. And so it brings me a great amount of anxiety because every time I go, they always think they see something. And then thankfully, they're like, oh no. But so the reason why I'm sharing this is that mammogram for folks with dense breasts needs to accompany either an ultrasound or a breast MRI. I've had both. So when I go, and again, this is because I advocate for myself, I see someone who knows what she's doing, a surgical breast oncologist. She, based on the level of risk or based on the concern that they find, she then says, so I always do, when I go to get my mammogram, I always do ultrasound. If you have dense breasts, you need ultrasound with a mammogram. Absolutely, mammogram is not sufficient for people with dense breasts. It's just not. And also, what people don't understand is that tumors are not just balls. They can be flat tissue. And in large, dense breasts, they can hide very easily, even if they're, of a larger size. And again, this is not to give anyone anxiety, but it's just to, I believe that information is power. For me, it has been. Information is power. Knowledge is power. And so I hope that empowers people and doesn't give you anxiety. But because I have this, it's just been the craziest couple weeks. I'm just like, every time I go, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm not ready for this. And, at the end of the day, I just, having CLL means that it is likely that I will have a tertiary cancer, which I can't even believe I'm saying that word, tertiary meaning 3. I'm just trying to keep it at 2. But, friends, I can only do my best and I can't control cancer. So the point of all this is that because I can't control cancer and because I can't control my health and because I can't control all this stuff, I want to educate and I want to share my experience, strength, and hope in that when I have anxiety about this stuff, what do I do? So my anxiety has been off the charts. Difficulty breathing, panic, nightmares, difficulty sleeping. Here's what I've done. Number 1, nature for me reminds me of how small my problems are. Going into nature reminds me how small I am, how insignificant my shit is, and that there is something much greater than I am always aware of or thinking of in the world. That's what being in nature does for me. Right now in Northeast Pennsylvania, it's fall and the leaves are falling. And so again, it's a reminder that things have to die to regrow, right? Things have to come to an end to sprout again. Spring comes from the leaves dying and falling off the trees. It's strange here because you can smell the leaves in the air as they start to change and disintegrate. And it has this like really fascinating, interesting smell. And so it helps remind me that like there's something greater, and that number one helps my anxiety. So the sun in my face, the breeze in my hair, walking, even after getting grazed by a car in my neighborhood, I got back on that horse and still walked past that woman's house multiple times, by the way, because ya Bish ain't scared of nobody. So physically moving my body at least 15 to 20 minutes a day, even when I don't feel well, has been really important. Getting in nature, the sun, the breeze. It's been unseasonably warm here. So opening the windows, airing out the house, stuff like that. Okay, that's number one. Number two, my severe anxiety due to the unknown and things that I can't control and fear about, like, another cancer, it's irrational. I'm trying to create my own sense of safety by like predicting what's going to happen, but I can't do that. So being aware of it, acknowledging it, and calling it out, also super helpful. Number three, 4-7-8 breathing trick. 4-7-8 breathing trick I've talked about before. I swear by this. You breathe in for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 7, and breathe it out for a count of 8. And they say that Navy SEALs do this 5 times and it automatically makes them fall asleep because Navy SEALs, obviously are dealing with more stress than I am. Their lives are probably literally in danger like all the time, depending on what they're doing. And so I laugh again because I need to take the opportunity to like not troll myself, but I do kind of joke with myself and hold myself accountable. And it's like, oh, really, Melissa, you're so worried about that? Well, Navy SEALs are, protecting our freedom, and like they can fall asleep, so you can do. 4-7-8 breathing trick. There is something that it does to the brain, to the body. It is extremely effective. There is science behind it. I can do an episode on that if you like. Also, by the way, if you do this and you're like, oh, I can't hold it for that long or breathe it out for that long, you just have to practice. Because what people don't understand, so I used to teach about, like meditation and deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, things like that. And our lungs are instruments. So we train them, people who are swimmers, who play instruments, specifically woodwinds. By the way, I used to play the clarinet. I was a band geek. I played the clarinet and I loved every second of it. But it takes a lot of breath work. To know how to be able to do some of that stuff, to play the music, to do all those things. And so like Michael Phelps can hold his breath for like a ridiculous amount of time as a swimmer because he's trained. So I encourage people listening to this to start training your lungs if you struggle with anxiety, and really breathing is the biggest thing. And I just want to be honest that even me who teaches this, like I literally teach this, I forget to breathe because complex PTSD, it's not like a character flaw, it's a disorder. And I forget to breathe. And then that increases shortness of breath and feelings of panic. And so for me, the most important thing that most people miss with anxiety is breath work. So I'm just going to give a lovely reminder about that. Let me see. Was there anything? Oh, yes. Talking to loved ones and trusted friends. I'm lucky enough to have some friends who are like sisters and some people in my life who are just a great sense of support for me. So, for me, I always had to solve my own problems. And so I used to kind of go dark when I would get stressed out. And now I have to, yes, I'm going to use that phrase you all hate, act opposite. I have to act opposite by not isolating and engaging with people. And you know what? Honestly, it helps. I'm serious. It really does help because I'm someone who I would love to isolate, not leave my house for weeks, not talk to anybody, but that's a recipe for mental health issues if I've ever heard one. So talking to folks, but also lastly is like allowing my creativity to lead me. So I love doing crafts. I love making my own floral arrangements. I'm huge on interior decor and like creating crafts for, the holidays coming up. I do them for myself. I make them as gifts for people. And then of course the podcast. If you're struggling and you're going through it, you're not alone. If you look at me as like some sort of sense of wisdom and I'm struggling with this, well then, don't gaslight yourself because, look at you the same way you look at me, right? We're all human. We're all going through this stuff. And so I hope some of this has helped you all, and I will keep everybody posted. I'm sure everything's going to be fine. And guess what? If it's not, I'm going to deal with it. That's the thing that people don't realize with anxiety too. It's like, people think, oh my gosh, if this happened, I could never ... And it's like, no, of course I said the same thing to myself. Well, if I ever got cancer again, I couldn't blah, blah, blah. And it's like, here I am living my daily life, talking to you all, being the happiest I've been in my life, having a new career and a successful podcast. So, I think it just sometimes looks different for everybody, but hopefully this has been helpful to you all. We have a very tense election coming up. Daylight savings time is soon upon us, which only leads to more seasonal affective disorder. So my point is, Bish has your back. I gotcha. I will be here with my tips and tricks. And if not, I will just be here to validate and have a kiki and a laugh. So for today, I'm going to say, please take care of yourselves and each other, and ta-ta for now. Disclaimer. Posts are not intended to diagnose, treat, or provide medical advice. Your Bish therapist is for entertainment and informational purposes only. The podcast, my opinions, and posts are my own and not associated with past or present employers, any organizations, Bravo TV, Greyheart Productions, or any other television network. The information in YBT podcast and on its social media is provided for general informational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat. Please do not act or refrain from acting based on anything you read, see, or hear on YBT podcast or associated social media. Communicating with YBT via email and or social media does not form a therapeutic alliance. Melissa, operator of YBT, is unable to provide any therapeutic advice, treatment, or feedback.